Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Howard, and we're going to be discussing today some of the behavioral characteristics of ASD. This is for my EDU 575 course. This is video observation number 3. So, autism spectrum disorder is characterized with many different repetitive and restrictive behaviors. According to the DSM-5, this is part of the diagnostic criteria. A student must have persistent deficits in social communication and interaction, plus at least 2 of 4 types of restricted and repetitive behaviors. So every student with autism is going to present with some level of behavior in different areas. That is part of the diagnostic criteria. How these behaviors show themselves in individual students, how they're expressed can vary, but we do see similarities, but also a lot of differences. So the deficits are in the social and emotional communication, plus restrictive and repetitive behaviors. So socially, they have difficulty interacting with others, at least appropriately. Some students do try to interact, but maybe they're playing a scenario from a movie through their head. So they have limited skills in the area of socialization. They don't know how to approach other students appropriately. So maybe to get their attention, they come up and they want to tag them. They tag them a little too hard, or, and it's their way of saying, hey, come play with me. But they don't have that language or those expressive skills to do that. So they might engage in aversive behaviors because they don't know how to communicate appropriately or how to socialize appropriately. Emotionally, they might have difficulty expressing their wants and needs or their feelings to others. They might have difficulty understanding how to what you are feeling. So they miss those social cues, like they don't understand you're bored. You're not interested in hearing what they want to talk about, or they might not understand that they're making you upset. So those are things that they don't understand why or how you're feeling. They can't look at your face and really understand what your facial expressions are saying about your mood. But they also don't understand, if they do understand your emotion, like maybe you're mad, they might not understand why you would be mad. The restrictive and repetitive behaviors that we see might be hand flapping, self-soothing types of behaviors. It could be spinning objects, or watching things fall, maybe throwing things, running, jumping off of things, spinning of their body, spinning of toys or objects. I know students who love water, and anytime they get a chance, they want to immerse themselves in water because they just love that feeling of water on their skin so much. I've seen that before. So it's different in every student. You might have a student who hates water and avoids it. So we're going to see deficits and also excesses. So you might see excessive behaviors where you're might even be linked to OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders, like hand washing or repetitive movements, like a student has to touch things, or a student has to step on a crack every time they're walking on sidewalks. It could be little things like that where it's a pattern of behavior, or it's a routine, or it's an obsession or compulsion that it could involve a color. They're fixated on a color. They will scream and cry if they can't wear their favorite t-shirt every single day, or at least the favorite color. So we do see a very restrictive interest of, like, the things they want to play with or talk about could be very restricted. It could be that the only thing they like is Sonic the Hedgehog and they have to wear Sonic the Hedgehog colors all the time, down to anytime they're doing whiteboard, they have to have a blue marker because blue is the color of Sonic. And if they can't get a blue whiteboard marker to do their writing with, they're just going to have a meltdown because it all falls into that restrictive interest of theirs. So it kind of trickles into every area of their day. Sometimes I like this quote. What we sometimes see as a failure to behave properly is actually a failure to communicate properly. So a lot of the behaviors that we see, maybe the negative behaviors and the ways in which we were going to try to address them, come down to, at its root, failure to communicate properly. They lack those social language components, and not just social, but pragmatic language components. They might take things very literally, so they don't understand figures of speech. They're very literal thinkers. They don't it's either black or white. There's not really a lot of gray or area in between. How do we address these behaviors and these difficulties? Well, there's a lot of evidence-based practices to address these areas. We have DTT, which is discrete trial training. It's a method of breaking down a skill into smaller skill sets. So if you're wanting to teach a student, let's say, how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, first you're going to teach them how to get out the bread and open up the bread. Next, you're going to teach them how to get a plate and put their slices of bread on the plate. Next, you're going to teach them how to get the knife from the knife drawer, and then the peanut butter from the pantry, how to get the jelly from the fridge. All these little steps going into one bigger task. And you're going to teach each skill individually until they can string them all together into completion. So, a lot of things as far as like what we do in teaching, we're breaking things down into a smaller component. For students with autism, it usually even might see that even takes things a little bit further back. So we're really individualizing each step, such as, you might spend some time just getting, that peanut butter out of the cabinet, and you're teaching them in very specific ways. Visual supports are important. ABA, which is applied behavior analysis, it's similar to PBIS. In fact, PBIS is based on the principles of applied behavior analysis. So you're reinforcing the desired behavior, taking away the reinforcement for undesired behavior, and you're slowly teaching students how to self-regulate and how to self-motivate themselves through different tiered levels of support. In ABA, what we see is basically the tier 3, where it's very intensive in nature and you're targeting specific things in behavior, and it's very, very effective. So it also needs to be individualized. So not every student is going to be reinforced in the same way because they have different interests, different things they like, and different dislikes. So what motivates one student might be torture for a different student. So one student might love bubbles and will work for bubbles, and that's their favorite thing. You can get them to talk or do anything you want with the incentive of having some bubbles afterwards. But for a student who maybe hates bubbles, then that would have the opposite effect. Maybe that student likes jumping on the trampoline instead. And then you could work for jumps or Play-Doh. Just, it's important to assess each student individually, find out what is motivating them, what's unmotivating to them, and work in that way. So it does have to be very individualized. That's the whole idea of ABA. Video modeling is really a great way for students who, in my experience, are very visual learners. And it seems like video modeling is something that they really can put themselves, like they can understand it. It takes not only social situations that can be very confusing to them, putting it into a concrete way, in a way that they can repeat and learn from. It can be a really powerful tool for them, and they're really great at scripting and memorizing things. So it's a good way to get them started, perhaps like in social settings and situations, helping them to develop better manners and mannerisms in restaurants. You can, and it can be motivating in and of itself, because usually students on the spectrum, they like videos, they like watching things. They would love to watch videos of themselves, even probably. So you could individualize that as well, videoing them acting appropriately in a restaurant versus acting inappropriately. And then you can compare and have a discussion, and it's a learning tool for them. And we talked about PBIS a little bit. Social stories are great for students for that scripting purpose, again, because usually they're good at memorizing things. But you can present it in a way so you're teaching them a little script for maybe an area that's difficult for them, or a social story can help them to get through situations, to understand the right way to do things and the incorrect way to do things. So let's say a student has a tough time transitioning, we can create a little social story for them saying how they're going to go about their day. And usually it's about them. And we have a picture of them in there, and it says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I go to such and such school. And throughout the day, I get to do lots of fun things. I can go to music class and PE and eat yummy breakfast, and also go to room so-and-so, such and such, and learn and read and write. And in order to do all these things, I need to be able to transition. So I might be having a lot of fun in music class, but when the bell rings or when my teacher says I need to transition, and then I need to go to the next activity to do some more fun things. Transitioning might be hard, so you just kind of put that language in there and then practice it repeatedly. That's the idea. And then it becomes part of their schema or their method of teaching. And then it's easy to also verbally remind them. So remember, transitions are part of our day. That's just something we have to do. So we can go on to the next thing. I know it's hard to switch sometimes, and you could teach them flexibility. You could teach them any skill at all that you could think of, can be taught through social stories. So it's a very powerful tool. You could also individualize it, which makes it really effective. And yes, so I think that all of these practices here, are very effective interventions for students to help them with behaviors. Anytime that we're trying to change a behavior, you have to consider what is feeding that behavior, why that behavior is occurring. We would say it's called a function of the behavior. Every behavior has a function, a reason. It could be a lack of communication, the students coming up to mom and hitting mom because that child or student wants mom's attention. And when that student hits mom, that's exactly what the child gets. They get mom's attention. So we need to teach them more effective ways. So you need to go, like put your hand on mom's shoulder, or say, "Mom, can I talk to you?" So we teach them replacement behavior. But it's also really important that mom stops giving attention when the negative behavior is occurring. So that's removing the reward or removing the function, and then replacing it with that positive behavior. And that's when they're going to get the attention. So you make the attention contingent on the desired behavior that you want. And then so you slowly have this process of the student's behavior improving through rewards, and also taking away functions of negative behaviors, so that the negative behaviors decrease while the positive behavior increases. And usually, a lot of times it does come down to the behaviors, usually a result of some sort of delay in their communication or their ability to understand the emotions of others, or it might be a result of a sensory need. So we might need to implement a sensory diet. That could be another practice in here that we could add. Sensory diet, or a way to address their sensory needs so that they're not seeking sensory needs inappropriately. So that's about all I have. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And just try to understand that anytime you see a behavior, there is a function of that behavior. There's a reason that behavior is occurring. And it's going to take some good observation skills, some like a little bit of like sleuthing, detective work, maybe sometimes to get down to the bottom of it, why this behavior is occurring. Once you can figure that out, then you can look for and seek an appropriate evidence-based practice and intervention to address that behavior so that it's not going to be a negative behavior anymore, that we could change that negative behavior into something more positive, where the student's getting their needs met still. And it can be a learning experience. So thank you for listening. Bye-bye.